When you move beyond sketches, wireframes, and default styles in the world of interface design, you're going to start using color. Choosing colors can be overwhelming, so I'm going to break down the techniques first and discuss the pros and cons of each method afterwards. Lastly, I'm going to share my strategies for better color selection. Now, the idea is to give you the foundation for all of our color selection needs. You will spend a large amount of time with your color picker open and clicking around and adjusting things. This will help you demystify some of the terms and give you tips on navigating them as quickly as possible. Before we start, I want to clarify something. HSB is my favorite method. There are subtle differences between how every single software picks colors, so that's like on Figma or Sketch or Adobe XD, but I'm going to be using Sketch. I also advise you to get the most comfortable with HSB and Hex, as those are the main driving factors behind the whole color thinking, in my opinion. You also should know what are the others, which is RGB, which stands for red, green, and blue, Hex, HSL, and HSB. What is the best way to select and manage colors? HSB stands for hue, saturation, and brightness. It's human friendly and easy to use because it uses the ideas we already think of when describing colors. Let's break it down. Hue is a number between 0 and 360 on the color wheel. It's measured in degrees, like degrees of a circle. If you want to develop a good understanding of HSB, you should have a couple of anchor points in mind. Let's use red, green, and blue, since they already exist around the circle. Red is 0 degrees, green is 120 degrees, blue is 240, and red is also 360, which is the same as 0. Let me show you how it actually works when you're playing with saturation and when you're playing with brightness and what are the different levels it achieves. So I'm here in Sketch and now we're going to take a look at this. So we have this as a base color, and as you can see, when you go to HSB, what defines actually saturation? This is how rich a color is. So 100% saturation, it's a rich color. And then when we go and when we reduce the saturation, it becomes a gray color, simply because we're taking away from that color. And then you can easily fill out the gaps. So you can call this 75, you can easily call this 50, and then you can call this 25. And here you have a very consistent set of colors. If you want to do it this way, this is easy for one color, but is this scalable across colors? Because okay, I've prepared a color, but you can easily see, okay, I just want to pick some green color that seems interesting. So 150 hue. So if we copy this and just place the hue here, you can see that how it acts with different colors and different shades of colors. And here it is. It has the same hue, but the final effect is the same. So this way you'll be easily create multiple variants. Now, if you want to do it another way, there's also one other technique that you can use. You can always go to HSB and you have the saturation here, and you can see that you have the brightness set. So if you have the same saturation, which was 69, and let's just do this and copy it. Now we have everywhere the same saturation, but you can also play with brightness, which is relative lightness or darkness of a particular color, from black, which is like no brightness, to white, which is full brightness. Think of it as white light source, such as a professional studio light that will bright your light in the room. The more intense the light is, the more bright the colors on the wall will be. What we can do here, and fastly you can see if we reduce to 75, it starts to get darker and darker, and then it becomes eventually almost black. Now this are two different techniques that you can use. As you can see here, they're slightly different, so it's always up to you how would you want to do it. Don't worry if you're struggling right now. when you use this, it will become second nature to you in no time. Give it a try, experiment, and you will find what works the best for you. For me personally, the hardest color to work is red. Now we can tweak an error message to look slightly better if we just insert some orange to it or some pink into it. Now let's look at how this will happen. Now if we move this down and we just go and pick a red color that we like, as you can see, this is extremely hard color to work with. This is not a color that you can use in any of your interfaces, but if we move the hue just slightly, it becomes a little bit more friendly, and maybe you can move it to a more purple one, which is 350 or something like that. Now this immediately looks much better, and you can also play with, again, what we discussed, like you can play with the saturation. Maybe you don't want to be as saturated, with the lightness. So there are a lot of options that you can play with, and this way you can create different shades of a certain color, so that way you'll be able to easily create more consistent interfaces. White and black are not the opposite to each other. This method slightly differs from how we can think of colors. When using black, you can set the brightness to 0 and then set the hue and saturation to almost anything. Now if you go to the first example, and if you want to move this and create white, you won't just move it like this, or do it like that. Let me just copy it. So let's just copy it here, and let's just pick a different color. Yep, this one will work. So let's just do this. If you want to go to white, you won't go directly to this. Well, you might, but you can also go to something like this, which is close to white. Let's just add one border for us to be able to see it more clearly. Okay, but how would you add the other one? So if we decide, okay, this is, let's make it this 100. Okay, it's gonna be pure white. It's 245. Now how would we actually go? You can easily go with 10 increments. Like maybe it was 53, so maybe you can go 65. Then you can go 70, and then 80, oops, 70 again, and it just needs to move into that direction. So you can see it's 68. If you can see how it moves, then, and the other one will just go with something like this, which is 85, and this is 100. This is 84, sorry, which, let's make it 85, and you can see it moves into that direction. Essentially, if we just grab a screenshot of this for a better explanation, this was our starting position, and how we moved was towards that direction, which is quite an easy methodology for us to think, because this way it will give you a more consistent path. And when you do this, you can just go and play with lightness. But how do we actually do this to darkness as well? Like dark shades, on the other hand, don't need to be dull. Like try to, although you're removing saturation, try to bring some color to maybe just decrease lightness. So this is the same first color that we had, and we're not gonna go directly down to dark because this is dull, but what we can do is we can go with lightness 19, and this can be our final color, and then you can go and start filling in the gaps. So if this was our first, you can just move it down. You're basically taking away lightness from it. And if this is 19 lightness and this is 53 lightness, you just fill in the gaps. So maybe you can call it 40. And then this can be 30. This can be 25. And maybe we can reduce this to 15. And here, if you take a look, if we use the same method as I showed you here, if you want to go with darkness, we're gonna go into this direction rather than going straight down. When defining the primary call to action, we have to think about how to help user make progress. Example, primary buttons are login, sign up, enroll, save, and so on. Secondary actions are then elements that make progress in a flow, such as cancel, edit, skip, filter, and so on. Primary actions should be designed in a way that would capture a user's attention. The main call to action on the screen should be the most prominent element. Airbnb, for example, uses a red button that stands out predominantly on a white background. An easy way to develop a secondary color is to grab a primary's button hex code and lower the opacity to 10. Now this is not scalable really, and let me show you why. If we go here and we just duplicate this color and reduce the opacity to 10, this won't be good enough, mainly because, let's just make this black so you can see it. As you can see, if we just bring this to front, just a second. If we just bring it to the front, this is not visible enough. This is transparent, essentially. But you can see that the two layers are overlapping. But how do we then do this? How do we achieve the same color? Well, easy. You up the opacity and you follow the steps that we just discussed. You reduce the lightness of it. You take up more, you bring it more light, and then it becomes brighter. This way you won't have, even if you have overlapping elements, they will never be transparent. And this will be much easier for your developers, even when looking at the pure hex code or HSL or HSB, whichever method you pick, this would be much more easier. On top of primary colors, every site needs a few accent colors for communicating different things to the user. For example, you might want to use an eye-grabbing color like yellow, pink, or teal to highlight a new feature. You want multiple shades of this color too, even though they should be used very sporadically throughout the UI. Now, design is nothing without implementation in real life, so I challenge you, select a primary color for a side project you're working on, look at how you can use this color to create primary call to action, secondary call to action, and tertiary call to action. You want to identify what elements you need and how you make use of this color to be successful. After that, manipulate them to create 10 shades from your primary color by manipulating the brightness value in your HSB or HSL settings. If you like this, hit the subscribe button, like, comment, or let me know what you think, and I'll see you next week.